Hello guys and welcome to today's video. Today we're going to take a look at DeepCool's white version of LT720 360 AIO and a quite interesting case. This is the DeepCool CH370, an M-ATX case that supports of course M-ATX motherboard, and still you could pack a nice GPU inside even with a front 360 radiator. So let's dive in and check out what we got here, and all together to build a nice build and to check out the thermals and give you some insights on the case and its specifications. So in front we have a quite interesting grille, and this is the first thing that you see when you open the case, because it has some sort of a pluses, let's put it that way, in the front. But what you can do is right here at the bottom you have an opening that has a lever, let's put it that way, and to give more airflow. So you can choose the design or you could choose the airflow, even though the restriction to the front isn't that much and you won't be blocking an airflow through the case because it's quite open. You have a dust filter on front and it really does look nice. Now, since we're at the front, you could go with 360, 280 or 240 AIO, and the same thing goes with the fans, so 3120, 2140 or 2120 fans can be placed on front. Since we're talking about an M-ATX case, you have I would say quite smaller design than usual, and the looks can't be deceiving. So in these terms you have quite loads of space. Now, since I mentioned the front radiator, the top can accommodate 240 or 280 radiator or 120 or 140 fans, and at the back 120 fan. Now at the top, if you for instance decide to go with the front 360, there isn't that much space to place 120 fans or radiator if you decide to go with a custom liquid cooling system. But here's the secret, you can. And this is the thing that neither DeepCool or anyone actually thought about, because when you remove the top magnetic dust filter, you have loads of holes going at the top, and I use those holes as an advantage to place a 360 on front and 120 at the top. Now where am I getting at, right? This is the secret that you could do, and this is of course to an extent that you're actually attaching the fans not to the original holes that you have, but to the holes that they placed for an airflow. And this is why, for instance, you place a radiator on front and you place the tubes at the top, of course, because there is no room placing them at the bottom. Now, the original holes for fan mounting at the top are in the way of the tubes. So what are you going to do? You use two fans and you try to find the holes that are for airflow. Use the screws that have a bit larger heads and tie them up. That's it. That's the big secret. That's the whole thing that goes behind the CH370. Now, this isn't a big of a deal, of course, but for instance, you do decide to go with a 360 radiator on front, and what happens is you can place only one fan at the top because of the tubes, but you can manage and you can work it out just as I did. Now right here you do have quite smaller space to place a longer graphic card. If you decide to go with a 360 on front, you get limitations of placing a GPU inside, but nevertheless, I managed to place the Sapphire Radeon RX 7900 XT Pulse right inside, and you have 5 millimeters of space. These 5 millimeters of space is the wiggle space to push in the GPU and to place it here. So this is the build, and as you can see, it really does look quite nice if you decide to go with something like LT720 and CH370. Right here we have the B650M mortar Wi-Fi, we have 7600X on the processor side, and on the GPU, well, you already heard. 4 sticks of 16 gigs of Kingston Fury Renegade RGB DDR5, And of course, to make it look nicer, CableMod custom sleeved cables. I know that this build should be in whole white, but since we have a black part right here, why not go with the black GPU? And the cables, well, I can't have all the color schemes of CableMod, so there's that. The cool thing about the case is it has a ventilated power supply shroud, so if, for instance, you do actually have space to mount the fans on it, you get screws for those. And for instance, if the PCI slot is a bit higher, you could place it here. Now, this is a Radeon RX 7900 XT, which is thinner and has standard power supply connectors, so you don't have to worry about bending the 8-pin PCI power cables, and of course, you don't have to worry about the thickness, because the RTX 4000 series are much thicker and they can't fit inside this case, otherwise they would be touching the power supply shroud, unless the motherboard, which is MITX, has the PCI slot a bit higher, so you could actually accommodate, since it has 4 PCI slots here at the back. But that's only an if, and if you manage to find that kind of board. Now, the thermals are quite interesting, and since we do have a quite nice AIO right here, we have temperatures on the 7600X in AIDA 64 Extreme Edition with all boxes ticked, so CPU, FPU, cache and memory, going up to 80 to 82 degrees Celsius. The GPU is quite interesting because even with this power right here, and even with the, let's say, old design compared to the RTX cards, we got 64 degrees Celsius, which is quite outstanding, and this is at full throttle, 100% load in AIDA 64 Extreme Edition, which is outstanding. Now at the back you do have loads of space to accommodate the cables and place them how you wish, and in the power supply shroud you do get a hard drive cage, which can be either for hard drives or placing your extra cables that are going in the way to make a nice cable management at the back. As I already stated, for the dust filters you have one on front, you have one on top, and you have one at the bottom of the power supply. On the side next to the 24 pin you have a possibility to place a 2.5-inch SSD, and basically what you get here inside this case is loads of space at the top for radiator mounting. So if you decide to go with a longer GPU, you would like to sacrifice the 360 radiator, go with the 280 at top because it does fit quite nicely and it does have loads of space here, which won't even bother with the passive heatsink on the VRMs or even RAMs, so that's really nice and this could work quite nicely. When we're talking about the I/O ports, you have power on button, you have reset button, you have two USB 3.0 and you have 3.5mm jack for a microphone and audio. So everything is covered. It would be nicer, of course, if we had a Type-C connection as well, but I'm not going to go into that. Now, one cool thing that they added to this case, and it's really quite simple. This could be the second secret of this case, apart from placing two 120mm fans on top compared to the front radiator 360, is this. You have a headset hanger. So, for instance, you're in a pickle placing a headset anywhere in your setup, you're not used to going with the standard headset stands or anything similar to that, you don't have room to mount a headset hanger on your table, beneath your table, on the wall or anything else, you could easily just use this one. Quite handy, quite appropriate, and it doesn't basically bother you in any kind of way. You just push it out, push it in, depending on if you're going to use it. And that's all there is to it. I would say a quite nice compact case, really nice airflow through it and really nice thermals, especially if you combine it with their AIO or basically any other that cools good, that cools solid. You could be really satisfied with this. It's quite compact, it has enough space for everything, nice finish, nice design, nice DeepCool final touch, and that would be all. I'm quite satisfied with their cases in general because all their cases have a nice final finish in terms of aesthetic design, material and quality. The front does flex a bit while tying up the screws for the fans or for the radiators, but if you do that properly and carefully, you don't have to worry about bending them too much or destroying them whatsoever. Everything else, even the tempered glass, has nice white rims and is connected magnetically to the top two magnets that are really strong, and the backside panel doesn't go magnetically but has two thumb screws to connect the side panel, which is better in terms of you don't have to worry about cables sticking out too much and then the magnet side panel popping off. That's it. So CH370 plus the LT720, both in white version. My big recommendations if you're going with a smaller chassis that still can accommodate 360 radiator, you have, and you know now the secret of the CH370, where you could place a 2120 at the top and it even doesn't raise the top dust filter. The links for both are in the description below, so you can check out the prices of each. I think they're quite affordable in terms of cooling capacity when we're talking about the AAO, and the design and the capacity that you could place your components inside. So big thumbs up to DeepCool, and check out the links in the description. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button and notification bell. Stay tuned because more reviews and custom builds with liquid cooling systems are coming in and will be published quite shortly. So yeah, check out everything that you need on my channel and maybe find some other videos that might be interesting to you. I'll put a couple of those at the end of this video so you can continue watching. Thank you, and see you next time. Bye bye.